All right, so the second video I want to do, we're going to start with, we talked about the Greeks from Thales um, to the Pythagoreans, and I'd like to do three philosophers for you in this video. And we're going to start with Heraclitus. And Heraclitus is one of my all-time favorite um, ancient Greek philosophers. And for his date, we have like 470 BCE or BC. So we're in the 5th century now. And Heraclitus was called the Dark One. He's following the tradition of Thales, who believed all things were made of water, Anaximenes, who chose air. Heraclitus believes everything comes from fire. It's fire that is the source and underlying substance from which everything else comes. And it's a really good illustration for his belief system. One of the little jingles I use to remember Heraclitus is and I don't know that he personally said this, but it's attributed to him, and he says, you can never step in the same river twice. Okay? Because not only is the river changing, and by the time your second foot hits the water, it's a whole different water, right, that it's stepping into, because the river's flowing and moving. But the more we learn about modern physics, especially quantum mechanics, we realize that it's not just the river changing, but even our own physicality is changing. There's like an interplay of molecules and atoms. We are not the same people we were yesterday. And this is one of the things that Heraclitus began to realize was, he said, everything is in a constant state of flux. Everything changes except change itself. You can never go home again. That's why he's called the Dark One, because he quickly realized everything's changing so much, and you may have experienced this during summer break. When you went home after the term and you saw your high school friends or people you had known in your hometown, there wasn't that relationship you had when you left, because you weren't the same person that went off to school, and they weren't the same people that you left behind. Both of you had changed over that period. And it's so shocking that, like, when you join me on Thursday for this talk, the Fred Blackburn that will be teaching that class is not the same Fred that's teaching this class today. And so I just want to say right now, it's been my great honor to be your teacher, and I have so enjoyed my time with you. But this is the last you will see this Fred Blackburn. The Fred you get Thursday will not be the Fred that signs off today. And you will not be the same students that are sitting here Zooming with me right now. You will have changed. Things will have happened in your life, so you will not be the same. Even the physical rooms, the physical computers we're using will have altered and changed just in a couple-day period. Wayne.
You're not the same Professor Blackburn that said that.
I'm not. I've already changed. So this is why he's called the Dark One, because when he started thinking about that and realizing, gee whiz, I can't even go home again. The people I left this morning are not the people I return to tonight. That's why I tell my family every day when I leave the house, although I don't have to leave right now, but I tell them I love you. It's been my great honor to be your uncle, dad, your brother, helper. Goodbye, because I'm not going to see him again. This Fred is not going to see them again.
That sounds so dark.
It is dark.
Why do you say that?
And hence the Dark One. But think how good fire is for that example, right? Because fire, you can look at a fire. I love fire meditations, just staring into like the fire, because it's the same fire, but it's never the same. It's always changing, right? But you're still saying, look at the fire in the fireplace, but it's changing from moment to moment, second to second. And like fire, that's how Heraclitus saw the universe. Now, this is going to blow you away. Heraclitus believed that at the beginning of all things there was a infinitely compressed matter at the center of the universe, and the Greeks called this the cosmic egg. But out of this cosmic egg, it blows up, it bursts into flame, and so you have this cosmic fire at the center of the universe. But this cosmic fire sends out all these swirls, think like Fibonacci spirals going off into the cosmos. And that's where we get the galaxies and solar systems formed, even down to the planet and human beings. Out of this primal Big Bang, if you want to call it like that, even though this is embedded in Greek mythology, and that's why I wrote a book commentating on the early Greeks called Eggs, Atoms, and Emanations. And so this cosmic egg motif was part of ancient Greek thought. And out of this egg comes everything we can perceive and interact with today. There is a principle, though, called the Logos that orders the cosmos. Why it's not just chaos, it's actually an orderly thing. And the Logos designs the way planets and stars rotate. It explains how salt crystals form, why geese migrate, how spiders make their webs. But the Logos is affecting these physical, material, and animal things from the outside. Heraclitus believed human beings were unique because we had the Logos within. And Heraclitus is from Ephesus. And if you know your early church history, that is where the Apostle John was bishop, in the city of Ephesus. And in the Gospel of John, it begins, "In the beginning was the Logos, and the Logos was with God, and the Logos was God." And then down, I think, verse 12, 13, it says, "And the Logos became flesh and dwelt among us." And he's speaking about the incarnation of Christ, but he is using this loaded Greek philosophical term, the Logos, coming from Heraclitus, who lived before the Apostle John 500 years in the city of Ephesus. And I just love that stuff so much. Anyways, any questions on that part? Okay. Now, with this Greek Big Bang, Heraclitus believed eventually what would happen is everything would come back and be compressed again into that cosmic egg. And this is called the law of eternal recurrence. So basically you have this cosmic egg blowing up, creating the world in which we know it. It's being ordered by the Logos. Humans are unique in that we have the Logos inside of us as well as external to us. But eventually, all that matter, after it expands to a certain point, will then kind of contract, almost like a rubber band. You stretch it all the way out, and then it returns. And in this return, I guess the laws of physics and nature would reverse, right? Because instead of the dissipation of energy being spread out, it would now be being reconcentrated, coming together. And this philosophy, many people believe, is what actually drove Friedrich Nietzsche insane, because he could not stop thinking about the law of eternal recurrence. And let me explain it to you this way. If you have an infinite amount of time, but a finite amount of matter, well, you can only arrange the physical material world so many times before it starts to repeat itself, right? If you have infinite time. So what that implies is not only will everything that's happening right now happen again someday, but it's already happened before. You've all been here before. We've already been through this class. We've already done this lecture. It just happened so many billions of millennia ago in another organization of the cosmos that none of us can remember, because our physical parts have been scattered, recombined, scattered, recombined. And so what Nietzsche realized was how you're living today is how you are going to live for eternity. And it was just too much for him, because the pressure on having consecutive eternal good days was just too much. But there's Heraclitus. You can never step in the same river once because everything is in a constant state of flux. Everything changes except change itself. Oh, he also had an ethic. And his ethic was based on that which is dry is good, that which is damp or moist is evil. And it goes with his whole fire motif, okay? So dry things are fuel for that cosmic fire, where damp or moist things tend to put things out. Well, guess what? Males are dry, females are damp. And so already you have this like sexism, but for whole different reasons. In my anthropology class, there's an example they give about this principle, and it's called, hopefully I'm not butchering this, but I believe it's called The People of Who from the Land of Nu. I know it sounds like a Dr. Seuss book. But in this South Pacific island, the people believe that the men are dry, and that's a virtue and a value, and the women are damp or moist, and that's something that you want to be avoided. Even the women want to be drier, and the men are trying to avoid becoming dampened. Go ahead there.
So does he only apply this ethic towards people, or just towards like inanimate objects, things like where he would like
inanimate too, because the men would only eat like dried fish, jerky, nuts, things without a lot of moisture content, because they were afraid by eating things like melons or sauces or things that were moist, it would actually feminize them. In fact, the men would all live together in a longhouse, and the women were kept separate because they didn't want to be tainted by the dampness of the women. Now, women would actually get dryness by hanging out with men. So women would try to entice men into sexual congress or relationships, because the more they were with men, the more dried out they would become, and the damper the men would become. So it's just a weird interaction in that culture. The only women that were allowed in the longhouses were women who had passed their menstrual period, and when you think of an older woman, we think of them as maybe being a little drier, right? And it's so interesting when you see old married couples, they tend to move towards looking like each other through age, right? They kind of take on the same sort of weight, disposition, things like that. And so women become drier over time, and men become damper as they live in a marriage family relationship. I mean, look at me, for heaven's sakes. I'm so moist now, it's not even funny. When I was your age, I looked like a jackrabbit. I was just lean, muscle, bone, leathery skin, and now I've been so moisturized, I have all these more like feminine qualities and traits. I think I'm a lot more gentle, a lot more nurturing than I was in my youth. But those masculine strengths would be associated with male qualities. And I just love it. I would love to do like a whole ethics of dryness someday. It would make a great deodorant or antiperspirant commercial too. The People of Who and the Principle of Nu.
So then, if water is like a very staple thing that we kind of need in life, like what did they was water the only exception that they could like drink in terms of like just to sustain living, or
yeah, that would be fine, but you just don't want to overdo it, right? You want to.
Got it.
All right, so what else? Oh, let me close up with how Heraclitus' life ended. One day, according to tradition, he was walking home, and he stubbed his toe, and he thought it was a sign from the gods to end his life, and so he did. And so I don't know what that's worth or any of that, but
He committed suicide?
Yes.
Because he stubbed his toe.
Well, he thought the gods were like telling him, it's over, buddy.
Oh my Lanta.
You need to wrap it up now. And
who do you think talked to him? Zeus? Aphrodite? Was it Poseidon?
maybe it was the Logos that he was tapped into. I don't know. But that's so interesting, and I love that connection with Heraclitus and the Logos and the New Testament, and what a loaded philosophic word that means. Because for Heraclitus, Logos means universal reason or cosmic consciousness. In English, we simply translate it as the Word. In the beginning was the Word, but the Logos means so much more than just word. It's this, like, the mind of God, this cosmic consciousness of God. And I'm not going to try to do his disciple. We'll give him his own video and start our next class with Parmenides. And just as a little teaser, Parmenides' jingle, and like any good disciple, he's trying to outdo his master, right? And so Parmenides' little jingle was, "You can never step in the same river once." And we'll pick up there next class.